We on the air? Everything's going fine? All right. Hey, having a little technical difficulty this morning with the chat bot. This may be my fault for not checking in on it sooner, but looks like I can't reach my Kubernetes cluster. Now, what happened was, once again, this happened to me last month as well, or the month before, is I reached my spending limit on Azure because I'm doing some demos and extra stuff at events, and I just forget ahead of time to, hey, take that spending cap off. So I should probably do something about that more permanent. But so what happened was Microsoft said, hey, we're shutting you down because you've reached your spending limit. So anything that's not a free service is off. And so at the time, I was panicking. I had this booth demo up, so I went through all that, get that up and running. That went fine. I neglected to check on my chatbot though, and right now I'm regretting that because I'm getting some timeouts. So I'm trying to port forward to the chatbot. So I'm guessing the chatbot's not going to work for today. So I apologize for that. Chatbot is down for the day. Sorry. I'll look at it after the stream today. As I don't want to get up and running locally this time. And I'm just now noticing that my shirt looks especially fuzzy in the stream today. And it is kind of a speckled shirt, so it could be that. But let's check out if I can't make this a little better. Okay, that's okay. It's a little speckled in the background. Really need to figure out this whole lighting situation. That is just too much. Let's see. I want some filters, and I want this filter here. That's pretty good. That's my little pop filter, but we can deal with that. Okay. Well, it may just be the resolution on my preview. Anywho, Merry Christmas for a cup of coffee. This is my new Santa mug. It's not Christmas time, but it's a huge mug, so I like it. All right, today, episode 48. Let's see if we can get through this. We got a lot to cover today. A lot to cover. We're going to talk about full text search with Couchbase, and this was prompted at the event I was at last week, Code Mash, and there's other questions we might get to that were asked at the booth. But this is one I thought was most interesting. Was someone came up to me on the second day of the booth, who's actually a Twitch user, who I don't think has joined in the chat before. But if you're out there, AJ2017, thank you for coming up to the booth and talking Twitch with me and talking Couchbase. And this episode is prompted because of your questions. So very much appreciate you coming to the booth. And you weren't the only one, by the way. There are lots of people coming up to me at this event at Code Mash last week and saying, oh, hey, I watched your Twitch stream. It's great. Thank you for doing it. Enjoy it. I enjoy the whole live coding thing. A lot of people were just like, I put streaming on in the background while I'm working, which I don't understand that. That's impressive to me that you can sort of multitask like that. I don't think I could do that myself. But if you're listening in the background, if you're just got it turned on for a little background noise, occasional distraction, that's great. Welcome to the channel. I would ask, and I asked all these people that come up to me at the booth to just say hi in the chat. Just drop a hi in there. A little bit of just let us know you're out there. Let me know you're listening. If you have questions, feel free to drop them in, of course. But just a hi would be nice, just so I know you're out there. I kind of had an idea. A lot of people were doing this because if you do Twitch, you know that after a stream they send you a summary email afterwards, and I noticed that number of people chatting and the number of people viewing, very different numbers. So anyway, that's totally fine. You can lurk if you want to. That's great. That's fine. I'm glad that you're here. But I would appreciate just saying hi in the chat room so I know you're out there. And feel free to leave a question, because in this channel, in this stream, the only stupid question is one you don't ask. So this is a safe place to ask any question you think you want the answer to. Please ask away, and do not be afraid of me calling your question stupid, and no one else in the chat should be calling it stupid either, because this is how we learn. We learn through questions. Hey, who's this? We got Bald Bearded Builder. Hey, yes, I know. You are a bit of a lurker. I've seen you sometimes. That's Michael Jolly. Definitely check out his channel. If I had the bot working, I would give him a shout out, but it's Bald Bearded Builder on Twitch. One of my favorite streamers, one of my teammates. But yes, thank you for dropping that note in. So be like Michael Jolly, be like Bald Bearded Builder, and drop a little note in the chat. Speaking of that, I am on Team Live Coders. Bring that link up here. This is a Twitch streaming team, 110 members strong. And we all do live coding, live building, technology, all kinds of stuff like that. Lots of different topics, lots of different people, time zones. But if you're looking for a live coder to check out a stream, Twitch/team/live coders, check it out. And we'll come back here at the end of the stream and find someone here to raid. Maybe it'll be Michael Jolly, Bald Bearded Builder. I don't know what his schedule is today. Or maybe it'll be someone else on this list, but we'll come back here. Also, if you're looking for other streamers, there's a much wider net you can cast. GitHub/BNB/awesome developer streams. This is a list, a big text file that's searchable with Control F in your browser of all kinds of people who are doing streaming on different topics. Do Control F, search for topics, Control F, search for names, what have you. And it's people that are not just on Twitch, but YouTube, Facebook, Mixer, wherever people are live streaming. This list covers them, so definitely check that out. GitHub/BNB/awesome developer streams. Hasn't been updated in a while, but it's, we're just sort of now recovering from the holidays. When I get back from Code Mash, I kind of consider that, all right, it's the end of the holidays, time to get down to business. And on this stream, business means that we're doing databases. We're doing Couchbase, of course, SQL, NoSQL, SQL++. If you don't know what that is, you can feel free to ask about it. That is not a stupid question at all. I do a lot of .NET, C#, ASP.NET. This year we might dip into some PHP. I've been, not really a New Year's resolution, but I think, I've been away from PHP for a while, and I kind of want to get back into it. I might be going to some PHP events this year. I have a soft spot for it. I did a lot of PHP development back in the day. I did some Cake PHP. That's kind of my first foray into one of my first forays into online videos and tutorials was Cake PHP. I think Laravel seems to be the MVC hotness these days. And I have a friend, Steve Crow. Shout out to Steve Crow. He was also at CodeMash, who does some Laravel. I actually met him at a Laravel user group. So I've been looking at some Pluralsight stuff on PHP, trying to get up to date. Looking at some Laravel, trying to get up to date. So we may get into some of that this year. So I may add a tag to my awesome developer streams text here. Do some gaming from time to time. Old games, bad games, old bad games. So if you're interested in that, those are usually off schedule, though. I don't really have a schedule for those. So anyway, check that out. If you want to look at old videos, live coding, or old games, bit.ly/GrovesTube. Everything's on Twitch for a small period of time. Then I like to move things over to YouTube so they're there permanently. If you ask questions there and leave comments, I will definitely look at those and bring up the questions, much like AJ did. Of course, he did it in person, but you don't have to be in person to ask me questions. You can do it on YouTube comments. You can do it here on Twitch comments. You can tweet me at mgroves on Twitter. Happy to do all that kind of stuff. And this is a great place to answer questions because Twitter, we're limited to 280 characters. YouTube comments, it's not great formatting, right? So here we can dive in, answer your questions. You can follow up, we can interact, we can really get into it, which is what we're going to do today. TwitchBot is not on. It is not working. I got to figure that out, go through the whole Kubernetes process and see what happened there. I'll just give you a little peek here. I'm getting this error message. It connects to Azure just fine, but I'm getting this error dialing backend, which is an interesting error message. But it's a timeout. So I'm assuming something went wrong there. Maybe I need to reconnect my cluster, something like that. It may just be a quick thing. All right, C# Advent. I know it's been a while since December 25th, but like I said, this is kind of the get back to business period of time for me in January. So if you haven't done it yet, check out the C# Advent. We have 48 blog posts, almost two every day. Some days we skipped. We had a couple gaps, which is fine, totally normal. 48 different posts here about C#. This is a C# Advent. So some really great posts in here. And I will say one of the most popular ones that's come out of this was Calvin Allen's post. Shout out to Calvin about C# 9 that got some great discussion going on Reddit. This was a very popular post. It's a great way to end the Advent. But all the posts leading up to them, they're all really good. Lots of different topics, a lot of Blazor stuff, of course, but design patterns and language features and libraries. There's a podcast episode about Nota Time with John Skeet. It was great. We got all kinds of great stuff here. Some Twilio stuff, some Nexmo stuff, which is pretty cool. I had Nexmo and Twilio back to back. That was very cool to see that. So definitely check that out. Lots of great content there. This is the last time I'll plug it probably in the stream, but it's going to be there. And there's two other ones, 2017, 2018. So if you want to go back and see 3 years worth of Advents, Calvin and I, we have some ideas for making it even better this year. So we'll see how it goes. But you can definitely go to crosscuttingconcerns.com. It's near the top of the post there for now. Or csadvent.christmas will redirect directly to that post. You can check it out. This might be its own full-fledged website this year is what I'm getting at. Might be. We'll see how it goes. Calvin's very busy these days. I'm very busy. We'll see how it goes. All right. Pluralsight Course. Oh, yeah. Man, we have a lot of ground to cover these days. Let's just do this in an incognito. Pluralsight. And there's a new course on Couchbase, which I could type it here. Not CouchDB. Here it is. Filter data from Couchbase using Nickel N1QL. This is a brand new Couchbase, a brand new Pluralsight course. It's about 3 hours-ish by Keishan. Hopefully I'm saying that right. This is a course, 3 hours, 16 minutes, about setting up Couchbase, setting up a cluster, but mostly it focuses on filtering data with the Nickel query language. Pretty great to see this on Pluralsight. I'm also now a Pluralsight author. I've been approved for that, so you may see some content from me this year. Like I said, it's going to be a very busy year for me, between events and Pluralsight and streaming and all this other stuff and trying to get into PHP. I'm going to be, it's going to be a busy year. I'll just say that. It's going to be a fun year. Lots of different stuff going on. So definitely check that out if you have a Pluralsight subscription. I'm thinking about giving away a Pluralsight subscription as a prize in this channel. We're going to formalize that here soon. I keep saying that, I know, but we're going to get to it. So give you a Pluralsight, I don't know, 3-month or 1 year, whatever it is, subscription, and I'll probably have a promo code and stuff like that eventually. So lots of stuff coming down the pipe this year. This is going to be crazy. Okay, so definitely check that out. Great course. Upcoming events. Okay, yeah. I've got 2 events already I want to promote that I know for sure I'll be going to. So SQL Saturday, Cleveland. If you are in the Ohio area or near Cleveland, definitely check out SQL Saturday. Let me go ahead and paste the link right in there. This is my first SQL Saturday I've ever been to. And we'll just check out the schedule here. It's kind of like a code camp sort of thing, but it's all around SQL. It's put on by PASS, the Professional Association of SQL Server, I think. Oh gosh. SQL PASS. It's Professional Association of something. Where is it? Can we just tell me what PASS means? Yeah, that's fine. About PASS. And they may not use the acronym anymore. It may just be like a real... AJ 2017, how are you? We were just talking about you. I'm going to get into full text search stuff today, for sure. Yeah, bald beard, exactly. That's the point I'm trying to make, is they let my kind into SQL Saturday, which is pretty wild. So it's mostly SQL Server people. But that being said, SQL Saturday is not exclusively about SQL Server, right? It is kind of based on that, but it's about data, and it's about SQL as a query language. And so what my session is, it's about Introduction to SQL++ for big data. And so, since if you know me, I work with Couchbase, do a lot of Couchbase stuff. Couchbase is a NoSQL database. So that's why Bald Bearded Builder is saying, why would they let your kind into that conference? Well, because Couchbase is very much a believer in SQL as a query language. We have Don Chamberlain, one of the inventors of SQL, is on our tech advisory board. So we are very much invested in SQL. SQL++, Couchbase Analytics. It's all about using SQL against JSON data, against big data. So I'm going to present on that. It's not just Couchbase. There's also other tools like Asterisk and Drill and even Amazon's new Particle that are using SQL++ as a language. for big data analytics. So this will be a fun session. We'll see how it goes. I might get run out of that conference on a rail because I'm not talking about SQL Server, although I will mention SQL Server because one of the Couchbase customers who uses SQL++, who uses analytics, is the Cincinnati Reds, and they're using SQL Server and Couchbase. And they're using Couchbase analytics and eventing to do some really great stuff with marketing and householding and cool stuff like that. So it will be about SQL Server. DevNexus Atlanta, well, it's just called DevNexus, but it's in Atlanta. This is a conference it's a little more Java leaning, which again, why would they let me in to this conference, Bald Bearded Builder? But I've been to this conference 2 or 3 times. It's a great conference, community-run conference. It's not exclusively Java, it's just very heavily Java-oriented. I'm not speaking here, but I will be at the booth answering questions because, if I can find it, somewhere on here. Yeah, there we are. Couchbase is a gold sponsor of DevNexus. So I will be there answering questions and listening to people and their use cases and what they're up to with their data. So I'll be at DevNexus there. So definitely check that out if you're interested. If you're into the Java stuff, especially, check out DevNexus. It's Atlanta. That should be a direct flight for pretty much anybody. SQL Saturday at Cleveland. If you're in the Ohio area, if you're in driving distance of Cleveland, definitely check those out. So those are 2 that I can confirm so far. Okay, let's get down to business today. AJ's in the house. Great to see you here, AJ. AJ said that he puts us on in the background, which is totally fine. So I'm just going to keep saying AJ over and over because I'll be distracting him. No, I'm just kidding. The last time I was working on some ASP.NET Core Getting Started tutorial. I'm going to put that on the back burner for now. We're going to revisit that for sure. But today, we're going to talk about full text search. And this is because of code mash questions. Among them was the one from AJ. He had a lot of really great questions, really insightful questions about full text search and about NoSQL and Couchbase. So let's start. Let's talk about what is full text search. So full text search is simply a way to query, index, and search your data. You have your full attention, great. It's a way to query your data, but it's different than other types of queries. So it's not a key value lookup, so you don't have a key to look up an individual document. It's not a SQL query because it's not using the select syntax. It's using maybe a syntax of its own, or more likely you're going to use a specific SDK to interact with it. So if you've ever heard of tools like Solr, S-O-L-R, or Elasticsearch, I think some relational databases have full text search indexes built into them, but they're still using SQL in connection. But those are the kind of tools that you use to search through data in a different way. And why would you do this? Well, let's look at an example here. So, Docker PS. So I'm going to start up a Couchbase, my Couchbase instance locally here. This is the 6.5.0 beta, beta 2, in fact. So I'm going to bring that up here and log in and make sure I have a sample data bucket here. Do I have travel sample? I don't. So I'm going to add, as soon as this finishes pending here, I'm going to add in a sample data bucket. Okay, there we go. And I have this travel sample that's built into Couchbase. This has things like hotels, airlines, routes, which I think we'll focus on today, landmarks, things like that. Maybe we'll focus on hotels. I don't know. Okay, let's just say I want to do a SQL query on this data from travel sample. We'll call it T. And where t.type equals landmark, let's say. And just limit it to 10. I think this will work. Okay, so that's a query, and it returns this data. Now, if this looks a little weird to you, it's because we're in Couchbase. This is not SQL Server or relational database. This is storing JSON data, and we're returning JSON results. In this case, I've got 10 results. So I got 10 documents. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now, I could put this in table view. It's going to look a little weird in table view, so I'm going to stay in JSON for now. Okay, but let's say I've got content, and I've got address, and I've got title. Okay, I want to select just those three fields. So you see address, content, title. Now, suppose I wanted to allow my users to search the text, to say, okay, search for anything that has the word, anything that has bridges, anything related to bridges. I could use a like, and I could say and like t.content. Oh, I'm doing it wrong. And t.content like, and then use like a wildcard and say bridge in there like that. Okay, so now it returns this because it has bridges in it. This one probably has a bridge in it somewhere. I can't really see it. Maybe that's part of the reason why this might not be good. Here's another one with bridge and so on. But now suppose I want a more complicated query. And t.content contains, I don't know, cost. So I'm searching for two keywords, bridge and cost. All right, now I could also do something like this, bridge wildcard cost. Okay, and that returns that. But what if I said cost bridge? Nothing. So maybe you've tried this before. You're going down the road of using a like statement to do a text search. And the edge cases start to pile up very quickly. And the SQL becomes more complicated. And suppose someone types in the word bridges. Anything with singular bridge is not going to come up in the search results. So now I only have 8 documents, whereas before I had 10. So it's not language aware. It's going to literally search for that piece of literal text. And that can be useful in some circumstances, but what we'd rather do is we'd rather use something like a Google search engine where it's looking at it in a language aware way. If the word bridge is used multiple times in here, that might be more relevant than if it's just searched one time. So we have a relevancy score as well. And so there's lots of reasons to use a text search instead of a SQL search. So that is kind of the why we have a text search. Now, in some situations, we may want to use both. For different use cases, we may want to use them both together. So use a SQL query and a full text search together, which is totally possible with Couchbase. So then you might be saying, well, Matt, you mentioned Elasticsearch, you mentioned Solr. Those are well-known tools. Those have been around for a while. Why would I want to use Couchbase? Well, and this is something I brought up with AJ at the booth as well. One, let me just say, first of all, if you go to couchbase.com, if you go to solutions here, or no, not solutions, products, we go over to big data, you're going to see on this page here, Spark, Kafka, and Elasticsearch. So if Couchbase has its own full text search, why would we list Elasticsearch on here? Well, honestly, the truth is a lot of our customers, before we had search, they would want to use Elasticsearch with Couchbase. So we've built a connector that will automatically update Elasticsearch when Couchbase data is updated. So you can still use Elasticsearch and Couchbase together. And there are some things that Elasticsearch has, some capabilities it has that Couchbase doesn't have yet. But if you're just doing relatively straightforward searches, you can just use Couchbase's own built-in search engine. Okay, so AJ, is the connector in the free version of Elasticsearch? I believe the Elasticsearch connector works with the Couchbase Community Edition. I believe so. I don't see why it wouldn't. So yes, you could absolutely use that. But okay, so this is something else that I brought up. Okay, so this was, as I understand it, AJ, if I'm wrong, please correct me in the chat here. But what AJ had done is he has a use case, and I'll maybe leave some of the details vague about this. I'm not sure how much he's comfortable with me sharing. But he had a MongoDB instance, which is a document database like Couchbase. And the text search for that was inadequate for whatever reason. It was limited number of indexes, not great text features. I'm not really sure. So what he did was he stood up Elasticsearch to go with it. So now he's using Mongo as a document store and Elasticsearch as a search tool. So what you need to do in order to accomplish this, and I've done this before with SQL instead of Mongo, is set up a process. connector of some sort. Whenever data is changed in Mongo, that gets replicated over to Elasticsearch. So now you've got data going from here into here. You can search this and then either return data from that or use it to look up data here and return it. Either way, you can use them together. And this is a very common thing out there, to see Mongo and Elastic together, just like it was common and still is to see Couchbase and Elastic together. And what other organizations might have is something like Redis as a cache in front of Mongo. So now you've got a process to either when you return data from Mongo, you store it as a cache in Redis, or it's some other process that caches some data in Redis. So you've got another process here. So this is a very common set of tools that a lot of enterprises, a lot of organizations use. Redis, because it's a fast cache, stores things in memory, key value. Mongo, because it's a flexible document data store. And Elastic, because it's a really good text search tool. But as I say in many of my presentations, these little arrows are really hiding a lot of complexity and potential problems. What happens if Elasticsearch goes down or a network problem occurs and this arrow doesn't work? These things can get out of sync. This process may take longer than you expect. This may be a timed process, so there may be some latency between these two, or between Redis and Mongo. And so you've got, and beyond that, you've got to now manage three different tools. You've got to understand all of them and be able to network them together, and your developers have to understand, oh, no, don't make requests to Mongo directly, make a request from Redis. Or if you're doing a search, skip Redis and Mongo, go to Elasticsearch and do that instead. So you've got to manage these three tools. And this is kind of what we describe as database sprawl within an organization. We've got all these tools that are all doing their own one little thing, and you have to tie them all together. So instead of that, you could just use Couchbase. Because Couchbase has caching, JSON, search, all in one tool, one easy to scale tool. And as AJ was asking and was kind of shocked to learn, these are all caching, document data, and search. They're all included in the community edition of Couchbase. Oh, sorry. They're also included in the enterprise edition of Couchbase and some additional features in them. And you can get support. You can purchase support for Couchbase Enterprise. But anyway, these are all features that you can get in production for no cost with Couchbase Community. And it's one piece of software instead of three pieces of software. I don't know if I'm allowed to say who it was, but let's say it was a very large university in my immediate area had a situation very much like this, where they have all these different databases, including SQL Server, I think was in there somewhere, and third-party data sources. And they have this huge orchestration, all these different tools. And so they said, well, Couchbase has all these things built in. Why don't we just have one piece of software instead? Okay, and so that is the reason why you want to look at Couchbase, to reduce that complexity. So you wouldn't have 3, 4, 5 different data tools. You have just one. Which, by the way, you can scale on its own, and you can scale very easy and efficiently on its own. Okay. All right, so how does FTS work in Couchbase? So a couple things I want to talk about here before we actually get to coding is DCP and BLEVE. So DCP is Data Change Protocol. This is kind of the fundamental core concept of how Couchbase works. Couchbase is distributed. So there's a bunch of machines, usually at least 3. You could run it just one if you wanted to, but you're not going to get some of the high availability benefits. But let's say 3 or more machines in a cluster. So let me see if I can find a nice picture of this. Okay, this will do. So this is a Couchbase cluster, 3 different nodes, and the data is split into these things called vBuckets, which are basically shards, but they're automatic shards. You don't have to define these vBuckets. It's just sort of behind the scenes. You don't have to worry about these as a developer at all. when a document goes into this vbucket from the client, let's say, there's something called DCP. And so I'm not going to go into super hardcore detail because I'm not one of the core engineers, but this is my mental model, is that when that document goes into Couchbase, it goes into memory, and then it will basically trigger or cause this a DCP message. And DCP is a way that it's able to, it's sort of like a publish. It's like saying, hey, data changed. Hey, everybody, data changed. And this can be used internal to the Couchbase cluster and external, which is how the Elasticsearch connector works. So data comes into Couchbase, it uses DCP to announce, hey, data changed, and the Elasticsearch connector is going to say, oh, hey, some data changed. Let's tell Elasticsearch about it. But also internal to Couchbase. Data changed. Oh, we need to update a replica. So it went into this vbucket 5. Okay, let's make a replica copy. Let's update the replica copy in vbucket 5 on this node. And that's how the basic data store in Couchbase works. But it also works if you have, let's say, one of these nodes has a full text search index. Hey, data changed. Oh, my full text search index listens and say, oh, hey, I need to update my index because this data changed. Or update my query index because this data changed. It all happens asynchronously across the cluster. So what happens is a new piece of data comes in, or a piece of data changes, or a piece of data is deleted. And if full text search is running in Couchbase, by the way, totally optional. If you don't need full text search, you don't have to run it. It's still the same piece of software. It's not a separate module or anything. It's built into Couchbase, but you don't have to run it. Anyway, it will notify every service, including full text search, that, hey, some data changed. So that's the base. It's kind of like a message bus or a publish or a queue. Think of it kind of like that. It's a data change protocol built into Couchbase. Now, Couchbase is, for its search, a lot of people ask me, well, what is it using for a search? Is it using Lucene? Is it using something else? It's actually using an open source project called BLEVE. I used to say BLEVE, but it's actually pronounced BLEVE. So if we go to BLEVE, it stands for Boiling Liquid Expanding Vapor Explosion. Fine. But if we look at GitHub, something called BLEVE search. This is an open source project here on GitHub. It is a text indexing. It's written in Go. So our search engine is Go. It's called BLEVE. And this is what Couchbase is using internally, is this BLEVE engine. This is actually one of the top open source projects most popular open source projects that's used within Couchbase. But it's used other places too. You can see there's all these forks and stars. People are using it just on its own. But this was born as a Couchbase project. And you see it's fairly active as well. So anyway, that's what Couchbase is using. So whenever data changes, it will basically notify BLEVE that, hey, there's some new data. Index it, please. This all happens without you as a developer having to do anything after writing the index. Data goes into Couchbase, you've got an index, automatically updated. You don't have to set up a process, you don't have to set up these little arrows. It's all built into Couchbase, all built into that one platform. So let's do it. I've got this travel sample data, 32,000 documents in there. And if I go to search here, you can see there's no indexes right now. Let's close this down here. So let's go ahead and create an index. This is the very first thing you have to do to use full text search, is to create a full text search index. Okay, so we'll create an index, and we're going to call this, let's do hotel search. Okay, we'll call it FTSIX hotel. So we give it a name. It can be whatever you want it to be. We'll select a bucket. So a bucket in Couchbase is just a big collection of documents. We're going to select travel sample. Okay, and let's just walk through these different things here. This is a UI to create indexes. We could absolutely use a command line. So this is an example of an index definition, which is just JSON data. If we wanted to script this out, we could just save this JSON and then execute it against the command line. We're going to go through the UI because we're going to go slow and go step by step here. Okay. All right, so what is this? Type identifier. So the type identifier allows this search engine to identify documents in the bucket according to their type. Now, there's no magic way to give documents a type. It's really up to you as a data modeler. There are some common ways to do it, and one of them is to just have a type field in every single document. There's nothing magical about type. We could call it doc type, or my type, or whatever. Let me just show you what I mean by this here. So if I go to travel sample, look at a document, you can see it's got a type of airline. So that's me just flagging this document as saying this is an airline document. But again, there's nothing magical about this type. I could call it doc type. I could call it, I could call it Rock'em Sock'em Robots. It really doesn't matter. But type is a good name to specify a document type. So this is me telling this index how to distinguish documents of various types. Is look at the type field. Other ways to do this is I could also specify the type in the document ID, the document key. So again, if we go back to here, you can see this key, airline _10, airline _ 10,123, etc. And there's also ones that are routes and landmarks, that hotel, etc. So if I wanted to, I could say, well, just look for this separator. And everything before that separator is the type of document. So this could be hotel, or it could be landmark, etc. And I could also even get fancy and use a regular expression and say, okay, well, this part is defining the type of the document. We're going to keep it here. We're going to use type. All right? So this allows the full text search engine to distinguish documents based on type. The next thing you can do is add a type mapping. Now, by default, there is a type mapping called default. This is probably not one you should use in production. It's a decent one to use in demos and examples, because what this does is basically indexes the entire document, every single field in the document. No matter what type it is, it's just going to index it. Which, again, fine for demos. Not great for production, because this could get very, very large. This index could get very large, storing a lot of information you don't need. So we're going to uncheck that. We're going to add a type mapping in, because we just want to index hotels, remember? We're just hotels. We want to say, okay, where type equals hotel. Just index those documents. And by default, it's going to index everything in those documents that are hotels. That's it. There's some more advanced stuff. We could also add some child mappings and child fields. If we just want to include or exclude fields that are in hotel documents, we could. This is one of the questions that AJ had was, is there a limit on those fields? And as far as I know, there might be a limit on fields that I could exclude or include specifically. But as it stands right now, everything in hotel documents is going to get indexed. So I'll go ahead and create index. And it's going to start from scratch, basically, and go from 0 up to 31,000 documents. And then I can search. Although I think I did forget something. Maybe not. I'll search for bridge. Okay, so it came up with this document here. And there we go. We can see, is there somewhere in here that says bridge? Yep, there we go. Directions include bridge, and address include bridge. So I searched for bridge, and it found those because bridge was in at least one of those fields. And go back to here. We can also show the scoring for these to see, oh, this is the complicated system of math that determined that this is the most relevant result. Whoops, let's do this one here. We'll go in a different tab. And again, here's another document it found. We can see bridge is in 3 different fields here. But for whatever reason, this determined to be second most relevant, etc. Now, if we wanted to, we could also edit this field. And let's say, let's go back here. We'll just bring up one of those. So hotel, I'll try to bring up an example So here's that document. Let's look at this. Suppose I want to index just specific fields here. So maybe address, description. I could go back to here and I could say, I want to edit this index. I want to add a child field. Let's see, when matching on an FTS field, is there a minimum number of characters that you should use? Okay, so that depends on the type of search you're doing, which we'll get to here in a second. But if I'm just doing it from the UI here, I believe if I search for smaller words, like the or of, or smaller strings, it's basically going to match a lot. So the threshold is high enough where it's going to ignore those results, because basically everything is relevant, or a lot of things are relevant. But there are other types of searches we can do other than, I just showed you that UI there. That's really just kind of for testing purposes. We're going to get to the SDK. We're going to actually get into some .NET code, and you're going to see that there's lots of different options when doing searches. We can do conjunctions and disjunctions and exact matches and fuzzy matches and all kinds of stuff like that. Okay, so I want to map just the address field, which is a text type. I'm going to store it in this case, and I'm also going to add a what's the other one? Description. Child field, description, and I'm also going to store this. So when I store it, that means the value of this field will be stored in the index. Which is going to add more size to the index, but it's also going to allow us to do some interesting highlighting stuff. So I'm going to update this index. Again, we're starting from scratch, from 0, and we're going to be up to 32,000 here shortly. Obviously, with bigger data sets, it's going to take longer to populate this index the first time. But going back to DCP, once this is at 31,000, it only needs to update the index when changes come in. So when DCP, it's listening right now to DCP. If I make any changes, add any more documents, it's going to update this index incrementally. All right, so anyway, let's go back and search for bridge again. And now, because I'm indexing these specific fields, address and description, it can now highlight and say, oh, hey, there's bridge in here, and there's bridge in here. And if I wanted to, if I can remember the syntax for this, let's see. Okay. Let's say I spelled bridge wrong. It's not matching bridge exactly, but suppose I wanted to give a fuzzy search. And so kind of the straight text syntax for this is tilde and then a fuzziness factor of 2. If I search this, then it's going to come back with a lot of results. Maybe not as fuzzy. There we go. So you see I said bridge, and it's not exactly the same. There's no E there, but it's able to be language aware enough to know that this bridge is probably the same word as they mean here. Or I could say bridges, which is plural, right? So it's going to say here, oh, bridges. Bridges matches bridge, right? So it's language aware. And if you've ever heard the term Levenstein distance before, I'm not going to go into this, but I'll just say, is it distance or difference? I can't spell it right. Levenstein distance is a linguistic way, a mathematical way to say how close words are. And it's the number, it's the minimum number of single character edits to change one word into the other. So bridge would be very close without an E to an E. That's very close. That's Levenstein distance of 1. I only have to change one character, add an E to it, etc. Right, so that's probably more complex than that, but you can see some examples here of kitten is close to sitten, sitten is close to sitten, sitten is close to sitting, etc. So that is the algorithm that uses for fuzzy matches, Levenstein distance. Anywho, so we've got this index. Let's go back here, and we're going to edit this. So if I want to, I can add individual fields to this and store them in the results. All right. So that is how FTS works. So let's go ahead and, by the way, I'll put a link here. This is kind of the marketing page for full text search, but that'll get you started. Lots of interesting stuff there. Let's do some coding. Now, I got to say, first off, that when it comes to full text search, there's someone on my team who is much more of an expert than me, and his name is Rosa. He is based in Europe. And I put his name right there in chat, he has done some really, really great examples of full text search, and he has dived really deeply into it. I believe this is because in a previous career, he's actually used Couchbase for this, and he's used Elasticsearch for this as well. So it's something that he is very passionate about and has gone very deeply into. If you see full text search blog posts on Couchbase, they're probably going to be written by Rosa. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. I'm just going to do a console app here to kind of demonstrate this. We're doing a .NET Core console app, Visual Studio, and I'm going to call it FTS Example Twitch. Put this in my folder here. Create that. And I'm probably going to be stumbling my way through the code, is why I bring up the whole thing with Dennis, because he would probably just rattle the stuff off. He's more of a Java guy, but he could probably rattle the stuff off much better than I could. So we're going to add Couchbase here. Just on NuGet, we say Couchbase Net Client right there. And I'm not going to use the 3.0 beta. I'm going to use 2. I'm not quite sure all the bugs are out of the 3.0 beta yet. And there's some other things that I'm not quite ready to get into. We'll get into them eventually. Some really cool stuff coming up in the 3.0 SDK, which corresponds to the 6.5 Couchbase release. Anywho, okay, so now we're here in a console app. I've got the Couchbase package installed. We're going to connect to the Couchbase cluster. We do that by saying new cluster, new client configuration. This is stuff that normally we put in a config file. Servers equals new list of servers. Because it's clustered, you can specify more than one or more nodes. I only have the one, but if I had more, I'd want to list them here. There's other ways to do it. We talked about DNS, SRV, previous episodes. You can do that as well. Cluster authenticate. I'm just going to use these are my local credentials. I would never use these in production. Administrator and password. Okay. And at the very end of the program, we need to dispose the cluster. Free up those resources. Once we're in a cluster, we can now get access to a bucket. Cluster open bucket, travel sample. All right. So far, so good. All right. And just to make sure things are working, let's go back here. We've got this hotel 1347. I'm going to get that hotel by saying bucket.get, and I'm just going to use dynamic. Pass in that key. This would be actually result. So then the hotel would be result.value, and then I could say console.writeLine. Hotel dot, and this is dynamic, so I can get any of these. We could say description. Let's say description. So what I would expect this to print out would be this right here. Great views along with a fitness gym and spa. This is just me making sure that my .NET program is connecting to Couchbase and is working. There's my console app. The output is great views along with a fitness gym and spa. Perfect. So this is by far the fastest operation you can do in Couchbase is a get, a lookup by the key. Now, if I was running a real application, I'd probably want to use a hotel class here instead of dynamic and define that, but dynamic is fine for now. Okay. Let's do a search. So let's, I've got some code here on the, some documentation on my other screen that you can't see, but I want to do a query. So we're going to do a search query, and we're going to say new search query. This is part of the Couchbase SDK. Inside that search query object, I'm going to specify an index. And the index name is the one that we gave it back here, FTS-IX hotel. Whoops. Come on, work with me. FTX-IX hotel. Okay. And we can give it a query. And so what kind of query do we want to put in there? Let's figure that out. And I can also say search params. And this is some things where I might want to say, I want to limit to 10 results. I want to specify a timeout. So like time span, I don't want it to run forever. So we'll just say from seconds, like 10 seconds maybe at the most. It shouldn't take that long, but okay. So now I've got this my query in there, and there's lots of different types of queries. If you look at this, this is expecting an IFTS query. I don't know if you can actually see that. Let me, oops, not zoom. Nope, I want zoom it. Okay, I just want to show you this query is expecting IFTS query. That's an interface. There are lots of search objects that implement interface. So I could say match equals new match query, and we could say bridge. So let's put match in here instead. All right, okay, and so this is going to match. This is going to basically be what I was doing. I was typing in the word bridge into that query. So then we have, we can say results equals bucket dot query, and I pass in that search query. And then I can loop through the results. Whoops. For each result in results, console.writeLine, and just write out result and see what happens there. That might not be a useful output. Let's see what happens there. So you can see I've got, yeah, this is what I thought would happen. Search query row as the result. So I've got 10 search query rows, right? So what can I do to actually, why don't we just set a breakpoint there. Run through this, okay? And just to show you what's in an individual result. Right now it's only giving me the ID. So the actual fields, because I'm not said give me fields or anything like that, or any fragments. It's just giving me the ID of the document. So I can say result.id, and that would give me the document ID. See, there's the hotels. So what I could do at this point, and this is kind of what you do with your Elasticsearch plus whatever other database, is I could take this ID back to my original database and look it up and say, okay, well, here's the hotel. Now, I believe I could also say fields and specify the fields that I want. So I could say, what were they, address and description. Okay. So then I could say console.writeLine result.fields, and it is address and description. So now I'm saying, in my search results, give me these fields. Let's see, you get this data from HTML, or I'm just a noob junior dev. So there's no HTML being involved right now. We're just querying data in a database. So I'm using Couchbase as my database. This is storing data as JSON. And this is a text search against some of those fields in JSON. So we're not doing anything with HTML. At least not yet. And I probably won't be doing that today. This is just a console application. So I think this should work. Let's see what happens. Okay, so I've got an exception because one of these fields doesn't have address in it. All right? So it looks like, I'd be curious to see, it's just a null or is it missing? So that hotel, 28171, is saying, well, I don't have an address. So I can't give you that. Let's go back to here. Just kind of curious. So address is null in this case. So very interesting. So we could do something like, oh, that's kind of weird that we could say result.key. Wait, this is dot fields. Contains key address. If so, then do that. Otherwise, no address. We can do the same thing down here. Description. And we could say no description. This is just us saying, well, if there's no address in there, or if the address is null, then just show no address. If there's a description in there, then show description. Otherwise, if there's not, show no description. So let's try this again, see what happens. Yep, there we go. So you can see it's really hard to read. Let's let's put in a dash here. Okay, so you can see the first hotel, here's the address, here's the description. Second hotel has no address, it does have a description, and so on. So we're searching based on that bridge keyword. You can see bridge is right there. Okay. All right. Fine. We're doing okay. But suppose we want to do more than just search for a keyword. And this is something that AJ was discussing with me as well. Suppose I want to do an exact match. I want to say I'm searching for a keyword bridge. Oh, the question, are string searches case sensitive? Oh, good question. I don't think so. There might be a way to opt into that. But I'm not 100% sure. It's better if they're not. Well, yeah, I think at least by default they're not. So I could like search for capital bridge or just like SpongeBob case bridge, and I probably get the same results. I do, yeah. So by default they're not. There might be a way to do that. So also what I want to do, I want to try this. Good deal, yeah, it is a good deal. I want to do something a little more complicated. So there's lots of different options you could pass in this. If you wanted to, you could use full text search exclusively instead of a SQL query, if you wanted to. So you can do exact matches beyond just these, but the real strength is these language aware type matches, but you may want to do a little bit of both. So for instance, maybe you wanted to do a, let's look at this document. We wanted to say, okay, where I only want to return results where free parking is true. Let's try that. Free parking true. Okay. Now in SQL, I just say where free parking equals true. But I don't have SQL here, right? So I have free. So this is, we'll call this one bridge match. And we'll call this free parking match. Okay. And then, we'll get to that in a second. We'll say var search query equals something as well. Well, hang on. I'm getting ahead of myself. All right. Free parking match. Let's see. So there's other types of matches we could use. Let me just look through the documentation here a little bit. There's also something called facets, which is another complex thing. But if you've ever gone to like Amazon and filtered categories, those are called facets. Let's see. IFTS query. I want to do a Boolean match equals new Boolean field query. Okay, and this was what was that? Free parking? Is that what we said? Free parking, sure. It doesn't like this? What is this? Field match. Okay, let me just, maybe that's not what I'm not expecting. Maybe that's just telling me if the field exists or not. because I'm not seeing it. I'm trying to find a good example here. Basically, I want to do an exact match on some other field. I don't want to apply the text search to it. I'm trying to find a good example of that. Okay, let's see. Query string. Why don't we try this instead? Let's try a. Is there a numeric field in here? Not seeing one. A regular expression, we could do that as well. Oh, sounds like it started raining out there. Let's see. Yeah, I'm kind of curious. What is this? What is the Boolean field query? Oh, I think I know. So I could say true, and then I could say dot field. Okay, that's how it works. Okay, so I want to find. This is kind of backwards, right, than my normal way of thinking. But find.
Bada bing, bada boom. Hey,
we got a follow from Stoika. Thank you for the follow, Stoika. Appreciate it. Thanks for hanging out. We're going to say, I'll search for the word bridge, but I only want to return results that match the word bridge and that have free internet equal to true. Okay, so I'm going to say free internet. So what you're seeing here is I've got two different full text search. These are, I'll just take the var off here just to make this clear. These are both full text search query objects. But as you can see, there's only one. I can only pass in one object to this query. So how do we put those together? We can do something called a conjunction. And so I think conjunction equals new conjunction query. And I can pass in as many queries as I want to. Bridge match and free internet. And so then I can say, well, this is, I'll just put conjunction here. Okay, so this is only going to return results that have free internet equals true. So let's see if this works as well. No free internet defined. Okay, so let's just comment these out here. As I'm not sure if this is going to work because I didn't actually define free internet. So let's see what happens in the index. Yeah, it's all null. So if I go back to my index here, and I can add this mapping of a child field, free internet, that's a Boolean, and I want to store it. Okay. And update the index. So we're going from 0 to 32,000. There we go. Let's try this again. Okay, there we have it. So now I'm actually storing that field, and you can see all the results are true in this case. They all have free internet. So just to spot check, we'll take this one. And does it have free internet? Yes, it does. Now let's do the reverse. Let's say where free internet is false. They don't have free internet. I don't know if anybody doesn't have free internet anymore, but apparently in this sample data set they do. And so we'll just go ahead and spot check it. And free internet, false. So I definitely don't want to go to Furford House because they don't have free internet. And so you can see that this conjunction query allows me to chain together a bunch of queries. So this is an exact match saying I want this field equals this. And this is matching the entire index for the word bridge. I could also specify a field for this if I wanted to. And I can keep adding these criteria, adding. And they're all going to execute. And then the question is, then what do you want to actually store in your index? So this becomes a question of resources and preferences and patterns. Because right now, I can return values from my index, but only address, description, and free internet. So if I want to add more fields here, I can. It's just that it makes the index bigger. But the other pattern I could do is, because it's so quick to do this, I don't even need to store those fields in there at all. I have the ID. What happened here? Oh, too many parentheses? Not enough parentheses. Huh? Oh, no, yeah, I don't need that there. Okay. What's happening? Visual Studio is freaking out. Okay, yeah, so I have the ID. What I could do, and I wouldn't recommend this if you're doing like a huge amount of results, like 100 or 1,000 or whatever, but if I just have like a page of 10 or whatever results, I can go and do a key lookup and say key result equals bucket dot get, and we'll just say again dynamic, and I have the ID. It's always going to give me the ID, and so then I could say the hotel equals key result dot value, and then I could just write out whatever I want to from that document. So I could say hotel dot address, hotel dot description, hotel dot free internet. Now so it looks very fast, but behind the scenes, what I'm doing is a search. The search is returning 10 results, and then I'm doing 10 individual lookups of documents. So this is really 11 total operations. Yeah, 11 total, well, I use the word operations. 11 total SDK operations, let's say. So a search and then 10 lookups. Now, in the SQL world, that's terrible, right? I do 11 selects for one page. That is not efficient. That is going to be a terrible, slow page. In Couchbase world, key lookup is extremely fast and efficient. It's pulling directly from memory. So we're talking microseconds for each one of these get operations. So this is not the worst approach. Now, like I said, if this was more like 1,000, if I was getting 1,000, then we're talking about 1,000 individual lookups. That's going to add up to some time. So this is, if it's like 50 or 25 maybe for just a single page, that's going to be totally fine to do this kind of pattern. You don't have to do this pattern. Like I said, this is sort of a preference or optimization approach. I could store the values in the index, or I could and have larger indexes, or I could not and then have to do lookups to get that data. So that's full text search kind of in a nutshell. We wrote some .NET code there. So AJ, if you're still hanging out, do you have any other questions? Anything else, or anyone else really? Anything else I can talk about when it comes to full text search? Ask away. As I say at the beginning of every episode, there is no such thing as a stupid question in this channel. So ask away. But full text search Couchbase pretty darn cool, and since it's written in Go, it's also developer cool, right? Let's see. I want my index to be a number and auto-incrementing. How does this work in Couchbase? Okay, so when you say index, do you mean the ID of the document? Right, because I've got, yeah, okay. All right, so I mean, it's a kind of index, right? But it's a key. So you want these to be auto-incrementing. So, good question. Not really related to full text search, but totally fine. We can certainly go into that. All right. So the thing is, when you're doing relational databases, you can often, when you define a schema ahead of time, right? Which is one of the core differences between NoSQL and relational, is that you don't define a schema up front. So, can I still do auto increment? So I would first, just for due diligence sake, I would challenge you and say, why do you need auto incremented IDs? Why is that important to you? Would a GUID or some other ID work just as well? That's the first thing I would ask. And if you have a good reason for it, we can proceed. But I'd have to kind of wonder why. Why do you want to preserve order? Interesting. Okay. So so maybe you don't necessarily need the keys to be auto incremented. You could have a value in them be auto incremented, but 6 and 1/2, I guess we could talk about. Okay. Is it increment? Let's see. I think it's counter, actually. Atomic counters. That's what they're called. Let's see if this works. Nope, of course not. Atomic counter. Why isn't this in the latest documentation? Gosh. Atomic counter. That's in the SDK. Fine. Okay. It's in core operations. All right, so maybe that's in .NET and core operations. Okay. All right, so it's there's good news and bad news. The good news is you can do it. Yes, absolutely. The bad news is it's a little bit more work than it is in a database with a schema. So in Couchbase, there are a number of operations. So we've seen a get already. We've seen a get operation. If I look at this bucket object, so let's just comment all this stuff out for now. Ignore that. So if we look at bucket, there is a get operation. There is an insert operation, which is create new document. There is a replace operation, which will only work if a document exists and you want to replace its value. There is an upsert operation, which will either create or replace the document based on the key. And there's other operations. There's like a get and lock. There's a touch. There is there's some data structure operations like map and list and so on. There's get from replica. And there's async versions of all these too, by the way. So those are all called core operations. There is another operation called, what's it called in .NET? Increment. Increment. And so increment will, let's just see. I'm going to switch over to what's in this demo bucket. Oh, this was from last episode. Okay. So I'm going to switch over to the demo bucket because it's empty and it'll be easier for us to see this. Let's say I'm going to insert hotels, and like you said, I want to preserve order, right? So I'm going to insert hotel num. I'm going to increment hotel num. And let's just see if this works. This is going to give me an error. Well, that works. Okay, so now I've got a document, a piece of data in Couchbase called hotel num. And you can see that it has the number 1 in it. All right, so if I ever want to, so now I want to actually insert a hotel. So let's just say, let's create a hotel class. Public class hotel. And we're going to give this an integer of order. Oops. String hotel name. I'll just call it name. And public string type. Okay, so we're going to preserve order. We're going to kind of ignore the key for now, but you could use this for the key. Yes, so you can see this increment returns a number. All right, so it's going to, atomically, it's going to increment this number and return it. And I'm just going to create a new hotel, and order equals num, and name equals Matt's Hotel with a GUID, and type equals hotel. Doesn't like this because it wants unsigned integer. Is that the problem there? No, unsigned long. Okay, so whatever reason it's using long, unsigned long. What? Operation results. Oh, okay. Value. You see where I'm going? Okay, yeah. So then I could say bucket.insert, and I'm just going to create a new document of type hotel. So So now I'm actually using C# classes instead of dynamic. And I'm just going to give it a GUID as my key. It could be whatever I want to. And then the actual content is going to be hotel. I think this will work. Succeeded. Go back here. We're going to retrieve this document. Notice that hotel is now 2, and the order is 2. And if I run this program again, can you guess what's going to happen? The next hotel is a different name, and order is 3. Very similar to MongoDB. Yes, yes. This is going to be a pattern you see a lot in NoSQL databases, because one of the trade-offs with NoSQL databases is you don't have a predefined schema, because the schema makes it difficult to distribute data across a cluster. So instead, you'd have some sort of increment pattern like this, a counter pattern. Now, I could also I use this as I could just do this too. I could say hotel plus num. So I could use that in the key itself. So you can see now this hotel 4, right? And if I run it again, it'll be hotel 5. You get the idea, etc. So you could also put it in the key. If you put it in the key, that's fine. If you put it in here in the actual document, you could also run queries on this, either full text search queries or nickel queries, what have you, SQL queries against that data. What about updating more than one document at a time? Okay, so now let me ask you this, AJ. Do you mean an atomic transaction of more than one document at a time? An ACID transaction, if you will. Or do you mean just like one statement to update multiple documents? Because those are two different things. So, for instance, with SQL, I could just say update demo set foo equals bar. And that'll update all the documents, every single document. Oh, I don't have an index. Create primary index on demo. Okay, and so update, this is going to be a warning because it's updating literally every document. I have no where statement in there. Go back to the buckets. If you notice here, every single one of these documents now has foo bar, except for my hotel num, because this is a integer, not JSON. So it's going to ignore this. So yeah, an update statement will update every single document. That I could also give it a where clause, whatever, where baz equals Cox or something like that. So that's a way to do like a bulk update. Now, the other thing is atomic updates, ACID updates. And I would love to show this to you in .NET. Right now, if you go to, let's see, Couchbase ACID transaction. If you go to the blog, you're going to see that, look at this, Couchbase has added multi-document ACID transactions. So when I say ACID transactions, that means I'm updating multiple documents in an all or nothing fashion. So either all the updates succeed or they all fail together. There's no middle ground between those. That is something that traditionally has been very difficult for distributed NoSQL databases to do, because the way that transactions work in relational databases, it's not distributed. Yes, Mongo announced this in version 4. Couchbase announced this support. Right now it's still in the beta version 6.5. 6.5 is not out yet, but if you're just doing the beta, you can absolutely do it in Couchbase. So you can see here's an example of it. Transactions.run, and then all this stuff in here is going to be part of the transaction, and then we can commit the transaction or roll it back if some error happens. And so you get ACID guarantees with Couchbase by using this transactions code. One limitation right now with this, and this is definitely going to change, hopefully this year, almost certainly this year, is that this is right now, it's very much client-based, There are some things in the server that were added to support this, but it's very much client-based. And the only client that supports it right now is the Java client. So, I mean, you could probably do it in .NET. It used to be a lot of work. You have to write all this transaction stuff yourself. That being said, it is coming later this year. I don't have dates. I can't promise you anything, but it's coming to the C, C++, and it's also coming to .NET. And eventually it's going to be in all the SDKs. This approach right now, it's kind of they're kind of being a little cautious because they want to make sure that they get this SDK, get the API here, they get it right, so that people are comfortable with it. And then once that's in place and it makes sense, then they're going to expand out and use the same type of pattern with the other languages. So the .NET version will probably look very similar to this. It'll be like a Lambda type of event, I would assume, or it may be transaction scope in .NET. I don't know. One or the other, one of those types of things. But again, this is very similar to what you see in SQL Server or MySQL, Postgres, very similar to what Mongo does, because that's what a transaction is. You run it, multiple statements, and you either commit or roll it back. And I actually have a presentation, a session I'm working on about ACID and NoSQL, and I've submitted this to some conferences, and we'll see if anyone picks it up. But at CodeMash, actually, we did, not me, but one of my coworkers, Craig Kovar, who was listed as Justin Simpson because Justin had to duck out. But anyway, he had a whole presentation on NoSQL transactions, and he showed example in Couchbase with Java, because all we can offer right now in public is the Java example. So the short answer is yes. Yes, we can do both those things, and you can do an update, just do like a bulk update, or a transaction to do a multi-document ACID transaction. So yes, totally possible in Couchbase. Really good questions, AJ. I really appreciate you stopping in and saying hi, and you're definitely the catalyst for this to Tuesday's episode here. It was really fun diving into FTS. What if I needed a random sample of a query? Does Couchbase have anything for this? Random sample of a query. So, let's see. There's two things here. I think there's two things. So, for one, AJ, I'd be curious what would you consider a random sample, and how you do that with a SQL Server or Mongo or what have you? Because we could probably do something very similar to that approach here in a query. But one other thing I want to point out is, you may not have noticed this. This is the query workbench. This is where I'll enter nickel queries, try them out, get results, see what the indexes look, something like that. Oh, Elastic does have something for it. I don't recall how we did it. I'd be curious if our full text search has a randomizer in it. I don't know. I'm not sure. One thing I want to point out, this may not answer your question at all, but it kind of answers it, but a little bit on a tangent. So I'm going to talk about it. On the right side of the screen, you see this thing called Data Insights. Now, remember how I said that with NoSQL databases, you don't define a schema ahead of time. Every single one of your documents is isolated. There's no relations involved here. So every piece of data is its own piece of data. Has to be JSON, has to have a unique key. Otherwise, it can be pretty much whatever you want to. Now, that being said, it's not the Wild West. You shouldn't just put crazy different pieces of data in every single document, right? So, if you have a document with an address in it, you should have an address field in every document, right? It shouldn't be address in the first document, address 1 in another document, or the address, or capital address. It should be consistent. So if we make that assumption that our data is going to be relatively consistent, there may be some slight variations, but for the most part, address is address, city is city. First name it's not first underscore name, it's first name, always. If we make those assumptions, what we can do then is we can take a random sample of the data and sort of get an implied schema out of it. So over here on the right, you can see this travel sample. Let me zoom in a little bit here. You can see I've sampled 1,000 documents out of the total 32,000. So then I can say, well, it looks like documents that have type equals hotel, that's 2.3% of those documents. And if I expand this, we can see what that schema kind of looks like. Now, this is not enforced. This is an implied schema. So I could add a hotel that has a completely different field, or only a subset of these fields, or additional fields. But based on sampling, we could say, well, it looks like hotels mostly look like this. They have a city, they have a name, they have free internet flag, etc. So I can sample these. This is using a sampling, and it's using a keyword behind the scenes in Nickel here called infer. So it's inferring a schema from the documents. So we can see 3.8% of these documents are airports. We see that this is found that there's a bunch of documents that are called routes. Type equals routes. So they all have these things in common, basically. And if we're using a common convention, like the type field, which is very common in Couchbase databases, we can do this very well. We can see, we can break it up by airport, airline, hotel, landmark, route. So you can see I've got 5 different types of documents in here. Okay. Now, that being said, if someone came up to me and said, hey, Matt, I need to get, give me a random sample, like the first 20 random documents you could find. So I could say select star from demo, limit 10. I could do something like order by, this is how I'd probably do it in Excel. UUID. This isn't strictly random, right? There might even be a random function too. I don't know. I might do a UUID. And just give me the first one at random. Right? It's going to give me a random on each time. That's not necessarily terribly efficient, and I don't know how random UUID actually is. I don't know if there's actually a random function in Couchbase. Query workbench. Let's see. Let's see if there's. I want to look at the Nickel reference. Arithmetic? No. Functions maybe. Let's see. Construction operators, functions. Type number functions. Let's see. Let's see if there's a random in here. Yeah, there's a random. So I could also use a random number. Mongo has nothing for this, but in Elasticsearch we can assign a random value to the docs when we search. You can assign a random value to the documents when you search. I don't quite understand. You're assigning a value when you search, so the search actually changes the documents? I mean, I could also, make that part of, if I just select star from demo, there's only a few documents there. I'm selecting d dot, I can say meta d dot id, right? So that's going to give me the keys every document. I could also just say random as random. All right, and this is going to give me a random number with my search, with my query results. It's not going to actually change the documents, but it's going to give me a random number back with it. So that's something you could totally do. And if I wanted to, is it going to be the exact same random number? I don't know about that. Yeah, because it's going to generate the number twice, so that would be weird. But if I just wanted a random order, I could just order it by random number, and it's going to get different results each time. And then a random sampling, you'd probably just say limit, limit 100 or something. I only have 3 in this case. Uses something, a random score function. Yeah, so I'm getting 100 random documents from travel sample. This might be not the most efficient thing. So a random score function. Okay, interesting. Okay, so that maybe is a little bit more advanced search feature. I was looking at something there is something called a analyzer. So over here, call it analyzer. Your typing is terrible. Seems fine to me. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything about random specifically in here. But what you can do is you can create some sort of function, I think. Or is it tokenizer maybe? Let's go back over here to Couchbase. So if you look at search, when I'm editing an index, I can put in stuff like custom filters. There's all kinds of advanced things in here, analyzers. So there's probably a way to put like a random function in here, one of these places. Yeah, so I suspect yes, but I don't know exactly how to do that. That would be something I should probably ask Dennis. Maybe see if he's online. Maybe I could ping him right now. Is there a way to get a random sample of FTS results? See if he's online and see what his answer is. But that's a really good one. That's a question I had not considered before. I've not done that before. Mostly when I do random stuff, it's like for ad hoc reporting purposes. It's not something that I would normally expose to a web application. But I could see why you might want to do that. And I would use a nickel query or a SQL query, which not going to be super efficient. As you can see, this is 250 milliseconds, so not super fast to get that random sample. But if I only need it every once in a while, that's good enough, I think. Really good questions, AJ. All right, so we're making a lot better progress than I thought. We are far along. I wasn't sure I was going to get through the code fast enough because I was going to stumble my way through it, but it turned out to be pretty straightforward. I'm just sort of following along the documentation. Now, some of these things are not in the documentation, like this get by key pattern. That's just sort of again, like I said, a preference. The random stuff, I can't find any random sampling in FTS documentation. Let's see. If we want to perform a search and return all fields in the doc, do we need to index the entire doc? Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at here with this pattern. Is if you want to search all the fields, you don't have to index. You don't have to. Where was I? Back here. You don't have to add an index for each of these fields. You can just say, search everything in the hotel docs. Now, if you want to return all those fields, you have to specifically identify them in here. I believe that's the case. I could be, let's see. Let me see. So cancel that. So this is only index specified field, so I'm opting into that. Did I do that over here? Clicky. Only index specified fields. Okay. So this is indexing every field. However, it won't store the values of them, if that makes sense. It won't store them in the index. If you store them in the index, then you can return them as part of the search results and highlight them and all things like that. You can always search all of them unless you check this box. It'll index every field in the hotel document. Now, if you want to, if that's fine, then you can do what I did here, and in your search results, just use the ID, feed that into the get operations, and return all those documents. And I think there's even if if you didn't want to go through a loop, I mean, you have to go through a loop at some point, but I think there's even a bucket.get overload where you can pass in a list of keys. So I could say something like key 1, key 2, etc. Is that right? No, wrong syntax. And so this operation is going to return every, all two, in this case, 2 documents or 10 documents or whatever. And this is saying, don't use this, use async instead. Which absolutely you should use async if you can. It says it's obsolete. It probably still works. But yeah, don't use the synchronous one if you're going to do a batch get like this. Yes, async all the things, for sure. I probably should have been doing that from the beginning. Should have made this asynchronous. Because I think behind the scenes, this is going to just use individual async calls. It may have some optimizations for it, but yes. So you have lots of options there. If you can. So like I said, the trade-off is kind of index size versus do you want to do separate lookups. One other thing I didn't cover yet, and this is new to 6.5. Couchbase, Nickel, FTS. Right here. This is new to 6.5, I believe. So when you query SQL in Couchbase, Couchbase's SQL implementation is called Nickel. Kind of like SQL Server has T-SQL, Couchbase has Nickel. And we have full text search, we spent a lot of time on today. We can now use those together. So let me show you an example of this. Let's see. Yeah. So there's a search keyword now in Nickel. So I can do a regular Nickel query and also use a search to get a specific search against a full text search index. What I don't quite understand is the index name. Oh yeah, options are index names, yeah. So you can say, okay, search this field with this type of query, and then what's the index name I want to search? So you can use them both together. Is there a good picture of the results? This goes into a lot of detail here. But yeah, here's the, okay. It'll actually look for, it's going to try to figure out which search index is the best. But you can get kind of the best of both worlds in this case. So if you want to use Nickel to select specific fields or all the fields, and you can use FTS to do your text type search, you can combine them together. Now, of course, you need on your server, on your cluster, you need both the query, all 3 index, query, and search services. With full text search, you don't need index and query, you just need search. For SQL, you just need index and query. But if you want to use them all together, it makes sense. You have to have index, query, and search all together in one cluster. So with the community edition of Couchbase, you can certainly have, ignore analytics and eventing. No, those are enterprise only. But you have data, index, query, and search. Those are all in enterprise or the community edition. But in the community edition, you have to have them on every single node. So your nodes have to be, your cluster has to be homogeneous. So you have to have data, index, query, search on node 1, data, index, query, search on node 2, etc. It has to be all or nothing. With enterprise edition, you can say, all right, for node 1, that's going to be just for search. Node 2, just for index. Node 3, just for query. Nodes 4, 5, and 6, just for data. That's what's known as multi-dimensional scaling. So we can go horizontal and vertical with our scaling. So it's a more flexible scaling, which allows some really nice optimizations. But that is an enterprise-only feature. And if you're in an enterprise and scaling is a major concern for you, that's something that might be worth picking up a license for. But everything I showed you today, index, query, full text search, these are all available in the Couchbase Community Edition. you go to couchbase.com/downloads, you can see here we've got enterprise and community. Community right now is 6.0.0. Enterprise is 6.0.3, and you can select your version, whatever. Right now it's 6.50 beta. This is not for production, but you're welcome to try it out. Scroll down there for that, and you can see some notes on SDK compatibility. I used the SDK 2. There's some stuff coming down the pipe for SDK 3, which is going to be the main thing is going to be the scopes and collections part of stuff. So haven't gotten into that very much yet. It's only buckets right now. Great. This has been really fun today. So what else? Any other questions on your mind, AJ, or anybody else? Anybody else lurking? Any more questions? I can. What's wrong with this? Hotel equals. Any more questions I can answer? I'm happy to. Doesn't even have to be Couchbase related. It could be .NET related here. If you're curious, oh yeah, we got this. That's right. That's why, because I got this other hotel up there. For our situation, we need to search on all or any of the fields. Is indexing the entire document bad? Is indexing the entire document bad? So if I remember correctly, AJ, I think you said you're around 50 gig, something like that, is your body of data? Is 60 gig, okay, 60 gig, and I assume it's going to grow. Don't know how fast it's going to grow. I don't. I wish I had a 60 gig database here. We could try it. Is indexing the entire document bad? I don't know. I think it's worth a shot. I think it's worth a shot to see how it works for you. I suspect that you're going to want to have a we're going to have to go back to thinking about scaling here. I think you're going to need more than one node to pull this off. Well, I guess that depends also on how many mutations you expect. How often are the documents going to be updated? Because I suspect that that's going to be a fairly demanding query if you're going to search 60 gigs and you're going to search every single field for a specific keyword. So I don't know. I think we'd have to try it to see what the impact would be. We have to try it under load. We try it just by itself, of course. It should be fine, but we have to try it under load as well to see what kind of resources we need to pull that off. So what I do know is that the enterprise teams, the enterprise solutions engineers, will take you, if you're looking at getting an enterprise license, they'll take you through a sizing exercise. This is one of the services they offer. Is they take you through the exercise and they try to figure out, okay, based on how big your documents are, what types of indexes you're going to be using, how much memory you should assign to these machines, how many machines you should have, how many cores, what kind of processors, stuff like that. And that is a very customized process. That's something that that they usually go through with customers or people who are looking to create a proof of concept. And the enterprise edition, like I said, has a little more flexibility when it comes to moving these services around. So with the community edition, you really don't have as many knobs to play with, right? You just have a number of nodes, and you can tweak the indexes, things like that. So if you're interested in going down that route, if you've I'd recommend you download this. Maybe even download the Enterprise Edition first, and just try it on that. See how it works for you. See if you like it, and then you can go on the road of either engaging with someone from the solution engineers team, or you could go down the road of trying on a Community Edition, seeing if that's adequate for you. That's what I'd recommend, for sure. Yeah. You have a very interesting use case, a very interesting problem, AJ, and I think Couchbase is in position to help you. Couchbase servers in a position to help you simplify a little bit. Of course, nothing's a silver bullet, right? So you got to try it out, because what I've been doing is, relatively small sets of data, 32,000 documents. That's almost nothing. And you have it's not huge. It's not terabytes of data. We have some customers who are in the terabytes, but it is a significant enough amount of data where you need to start thinking about those things, the sizing and the optimization, and is a full text search index good, or do you need some sort of nickel full text search hybrid, something like that? So lots of, at this point now, the decision tree branches a lot. So you really kind of have to start experimenting with them. Luckily for us, the enterprise version is totally free download. It is not time limited or anything like that. The only limit is you can't put it in production, but it has the full set of features. So you can try it out on, spin up a cluster of it, put it on AWS VMs. I think we talked about, you don't have Kubernetes, at least not yet, but you can certainly spin up a cluster on Kubernetes, EKS, and try it out there. Or it's also in the, Couchbase. It's in the AWS, I think it's called Marketplace. Yeah, right here. So you can also use the Marketplace to spin up Enterprise Edition. And, I think it's a bring your own license type situation. But if this is a pre-production, just trying it out situation, you don't have to worry too much about licensing just yet. Now, of course, I'm not a lawyer, so but I do know that compared to like Oracle, Couchbase does not have a legion of lawyers ready to pounce on you. So try it out, is my advice. All right, so we've got about 10 minutes left in my normal schedule stream. I thought we might even go over today because of the so much we had to cover, but it went very smoothly. And I think at this point, let's start looking at someone to raid. Keep the, oops, that's not there. Keep the keep the live coding going here. If I could just type in the address, crying out loud. Goodness gracious. All right, so we've got some of our normal suspects. We've got some new people here. Zeratar, doing some Ravenfall dev. Interesting. It sounds like game dev to me. Freeman doing some JavaScript and Node. Cool. We got Flav Creations.
Get moving in the new.
First day back from holidays, doing some game dev. Some more game dev here. We got Full Stack Live. This is some Rails. And Lex, I think, is doing game dev as well. She's always doing some cool 3D game dev stuff. So that's who we've got on the stream right now. Looks like Bald Bearded Builder is not streaming, at least not yet. But I definitely encourage you to check him out. He's got a great channel right here, Bald Bearded Builder. Previously known as The Michael Jolly, but now known as Bald Bearded Builder. I guess he's doing some sort of rebranding. So, any preferences who we should raid next? Looks like a lot of game dev out there, and we got some JavaScript Node, and we got some Ruby Rails. I think it's raining out there, but it's like also a little bit sunny too. Weird. Well, if anyone is a subscriber, make sure to hit the Calvin emoji, this one right here. That's my friend Calvin Allen, and it's him saying bada bing, bada boom. because that is his catchphrase when we used to do pair coding. We do bada bing, bada boom. Whenever we made a test pass or something, he would just say bada bing, bada boom. So hit that one when we go over to raid. I think we're going to go raid full stack live. It's going to be a switch to Ruby on Rails. So it's kind of a gear shift, but I want to go check out full stack live. So I'll kick that raid off. Please be nice. Full stack live. Make sure to hit that that raid emoji there with Calvin if you can. Say hi to full stack live when you're over there. Hang out, see what's going on in the Ruby on Rails world. I'll be over there for a few minutes, just see what's going on, see how Full Stack Live's doing. Say hi, and looks like he's got a cool looking keyboard, a little keyboard cam going. Interesting stuff. All right, so I'm gonna hit the raid button now. I will see you over there. Thank you very much for joining me today. Thank you very much, Stoika, for the follow. Thank you, AJ, for hanging around, asking questions, and thank you for the great question that prompted this episode today. We'll be back on Thursday. 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll probably switch back to ASP.NET's core tutorial. Oh, I think I've got all the materials I need for that. I think maybe a few more things needed to cover, but we'll go back to that. If you have any questions in the meantime, tweet me, leave them in the YouTube comments, what have you. But anyway, go to raid now. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
And now even manages payment data, and so I never got to make this